Great, thank you. So in the next about 10 minutes, I would like you to take you through 6 steps for abstract writing for conference presentations. Of course, what I'm going to share with you, these 6 steps are not set in stone, but hopefully they will provide you with some useful guidance on how you could approach the writing of a conference abstract. So first of all, as we usually tell our own learners, first you read the instructions. So in this context, we can interpret this as read the call for papers. And this can give you insights into possible content focus. So a typical call for papers will include a statement on the conference theme. So for example, the last LTF we had, the theme was language assessment and applied linguistics. And very often there's also further specification of sub-themes. However, if you don't immediately see a connection to the theme, don't despair. Very often conferences will also accept broader topics or other topics that relate to the broader subject field of the conference. So check for that opportunity as well. Then secondly, look at what kind of presentation options there really are in the call for papers, what types, what their focus is, what their length is. So for example, if we look at the last LTRC conference, there were 5 possible types of presentations you could give. And so then look carefully at the details of those. For example, in the LTRC call for papers, it said for research papers, they're looking for empirical and theoretical work, but they will give preference to proposals related to the conference theme. So that gives some guidance on whether or not your presentation would fit this or not. On work in progress, on the other hand, they said offers good opportunities for presenting research that is in process or research that is still being planned. Then it might also sometimes be the case that you actually would like to submit more than one proposal. For example, one on your own PhD research, but also one on a project you've been working on with a colleague, your supervisor, and so on. Now do check whether there are any restrictions on this. Most of the time there aren't, but sometimes there are restrictions, like TBLT has some restrictions on how many you can submit as first author, for example. Nowadays, I think a lot of call for papers also stipulate the criteria against which your proposal will be evaluated by the peer reviewers. So here's an example of the criteria that were part of the LTRC call for papers last year. So look at those as well. And then, of course, there's the formal requirements, the word length restrictions, and these can sometimes be very detailed, as you can see here. When the deadline is for submission, and pay attention to time zone differences there as well. And then obviously how you need to submit it. Once you've read that carefully, then step 2 is think about the focus for your presentation. And think about your research from a range of aspects. So what is in that research, and look at it, how it relates to the subject area of that particular conference and what kind of audience typically attends that conference. So that can help you determine an angle. For example, your research might, or the conference might be more SLA oriented or more testing oriented, and that might help you determine how you're approaching an aspect of your research. And then in terms of determining the actual concrete topic, then do reflect also on what aspects of your research might more relate to the conference theme, and some other aspects might relate less to the theme. If you've done a couple of conferences already, presentations, then do consider what you've already presented and where. What you want to avoid is repeating the same kind of aspects of your research for the same type of audiences. And then also keep in mind what the length will be for the presentation you're going to deliver. Do you have 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes? That again will also determine maybe what aspect of your research you select. So don't go too broad or don't present or aim to present too much. Step 3 then, coming up with a title. I think one really important thing is that you choose a title that remains that represents the main focus of that particular presentation you want to give. Very rarely that is the whole of your PhD research. So develop a title that really is specific for the content you're going to present on that occasion and not your whole project. Sometimes there's a very clear connection with the conference theme. So, for example, LTF 2016, the theme was assessing languages in higher education. Well, there, Sahar Al-Khalawi and I submitted a proposal for a study on lecture listening, EAP listening assessment. So there's that clear link with higher education. Sometimes there is a link, but it might not always be as obvious. And then it can be useful to actually adopt or borrow some of the relevant keywords from the call for papers. Like at LTRC 2019, the theme was language testing and social justice. And Olena Rossi and I wanted to present a study on item writer training, and there was that link with social justice, but we thought it might not necessarily be that obvious. So we actually used that exact term in the title of our abstract. And then one other thing to keep in mind when you choose a title is try to make it distinct from titles from other presentations you've given, not only because it looks better on your CV to have variation, but also just to emphasize that you've looked at your topic from different angles and highlighted different aspects of it. And of course, it's time to sit down and write the actual proposal. And I often find it useful to break that into 2 aspects. And the first is a paragraph that introduces the topic area. So pointing to existing research, the research gap, the significance, and so on. And so to show you an example of how you could do this, this is from a Baltisik talk from a few years ago. So here you can see I started off with saying, in recent years, we have seen considerable research emphasis on, and obviously then the existing research is stated. And then further, I wrote, several scholars have additionally stressed the need to, and so then there's a statement on what the research gap is. Of course, then you also need to move on to the description of your actual research that you're going to present. Again, there provide information on those details that are relevant to that particular presentation you want to give. Don't start with explaining your whole PhD or the big project where it's part of, but just go to the essence of what you're going to present. And then for empirical research, the key areas you do need to provide a very succinct statement on is what's the topic, what are the main methodological features or plans if it's a poster and work in progress, what are the key findings or what are your expectations for the key findings. So again, to show this with the same Baltisik abstract, so I had a statement there saying, in this presentation, I will bring together the results of 3 different research projects that involved computer-delivered integrated test tasks, so an indication of the topic. And then a bit further, the studies cover a range of integrated task types, target proficiency levels, and test taker groups. So some information on methodology there. And then again, further, phrases such as I will report, I will present the findings, and then at the end, I will also discuss potential implications. And so you've got in one paragraph the absolute essence of your study that you want to present. A couple of things to remember when you write this. The abstract reviewer does not know your studies, so you need to gently introduce the key information. for them to be able to understand it. In terms of the wording, I would say don't be afraid to use active voice. Don't be afraid to say I or we. And also don't be afraid to adopt some of the keywords from the call for papers, obviously those that are relevant to your study. I also find it very useful to, when I'm writing an abstract and there are evaluation criteria, to put them next to me and to just see that I'm actually covering the criteria. So looking at the LTRC criteria, so I would look at, okay, I need to make a statement on the significance of the topic. I need to write a sentence that clearly links it to the conference theme. I need to state my conceptual framework, and then the research design and sufficient information. And then nicely round it off, and you can do that in different ways, for example, saying things like these findings show that, or give a hint at the fact that you will discuss implications and suggestions of your research. And step 5, there's no need to try and be a hero and do everything on your own. So do share your draft with a peer, with your supervisor, ask for feedback. And also nowadays, with so much online, a lot of past conference programs are online, and you can actually look at successful abstracts who clearly made it because they were presented at a conference. And so look at how they've been written. And then finally, check back against the call for papers, proofread, and then of course submit by the deadline, and fingers crossed.